What's going on, guys? I'm back with another 31 Days of Halloween review, and today we're going to be doing what I feel could be a pretty underrated Halloween/slasher film, Child's Play. Gunned down by Detective Mike Norris, dying murderer Charles Lee Ray uses black magic to put his soul into a doll named Chucky, which Karen Barclay then buys for her younger son called Andy. When Chucky kills Andy's babysitter, the boy realizes the doll is alive and tries to warn people, but then he's institutionalized. Now Karen must convince the detective of the murderous doll's intentions before Andy becomes Chucky's next victim. So right off the bat, Child's Play really isn't the first for anything when it comes to horror. Chucky isn't the first slasher or doll-based horror film. While he may not be as funny as Freddy, as menacing as Michael Myers, or violent as Jason, but he finds a calm medium between it all to fit himself into the slasher genre, solidifying himself as an iconic horror villain while also being damn entertaining. Now, while you can say Child's Play was one of the first, it was one of the first horror films to interweave well-handed comedy into its screenplay, being real tongue-in-cheek yet self-aware, where you could say it inspired films like Scream later on. Child's Play has a fairly simplistic plot, which is fine for this sort of premise, but always has something going on. As the film carries on, it pieces all the information together well, tying up most of the loose ends to make a pretty cohesive story. The film does move pretty quickly, but also takes its time setting things up and developing our characters and sewing each scene together. It gave us a good opening scene to set the table for what's to come, while also giving a quick background to our villain. For what this film is, Child's Play is fairly grounded, where it isn't trying to be too big nor too small to be overlooked. It does a good job acting as a good standalone film, and also a good start to a saga to come, opening the door for loads of opportunity. The film just knew how to find that calm medium with everything. When it comes to the characters, everybody was fine for the most part, but everybody had at least a few moments of either being below average or overcooking a scene. I don't know if it was because it was written like that to play into it being over the top, but there was definitely more than a few scenes that could have been turned down a notch. Our main protagonist in Andy was a decently written character, sort of playing this The Boy Who Cried Wolf act, where you can feel for his character and what he's going through his delivery and his expressions. He was extremely young in the role, so a fair amount of his flaws gets a pass from me for the most part, but there's a couple of scenes where it's hard to overlook how green he is behind the camera. Now, on the other hand, Catherine Hicks does a pretty good job in her role as the mom, where it's easy to buy into their mother and son connection straight away due to their chemistry and also how animated her actions were. Although she definitely can overcook some scenes, I thought they did a good job building a connection between the two of them and then jamming a wedge in between it with the inevitable conflict that develops. But when it all comes down to it, Brad Dourif as Chucky absolutely steals the show. His voice fits so well for the role, selling every scene and piece of dialogue perfectly. Most slashers don't have much of a voice except for Freddy and Pinhead, but they have these deep, dark, diabolical voices where Chucky literally sounds like a real person, which makes it all the more eerie for my money. Sometimes less is more.
You stupid bitch! You filthy slut! Did you fuck with me?
The Chucky doll model looks so good, even in today's standards. The animatronics was well put together, not only making his mouth move when he talks, but giving him expressions with his eyebrows and cheeks on top of the actual movement. Now, although this film can be tons of fun if taken properly, it still doesn't come without at least a few flaws. My first issue with the film is some of the tropes, like people falling down left and right. You need to take these tropes with a grain of salt sometimes, especially in these type of tongue-in-cheek films, but Child's Play really overdoes it sometimes. My second to last issue, I don't necessarily knock the score for it, but it's definitely worth mentioning. As a horror slasher film, it doesn't really come off as scary or even extremely violent. There's certainly slasher notes to it, but I just needed a bit more to really sell me on it. In the last issue, which to me isn't really much of an issue, but I know a lot of people can't get over it, is taking the film for what it is. If you think too much into it or don't pay attention, the film will come off as stupid when not a lot of things make sense, especially some of the kills. If you can't take this film for what it is, this will not appeal to you. But I will admit, there are definitely some things that need a bit more explaining or some over-the-top antics that need to be turned down a notch. I, of course, had some other nitpicks as well, like some of the acting not being the greatest, which I already mentioned that, but overall, there's definitely loads to appreciate about this film. There are definitely some things that can be a bit hard to overlook, making this a pretty mixed bag at times, but I thought the creators put a great deal of heart into this film, hence making it a success in my book. Child's Play gets a very firm 7 out of 10 from me. Let me know what you think of Child's Play in the comments below, and let me know what film you want to see me review next. See you guys on the next one.